Chapter 4. Cornelius Murphy awoke in a cold sweat. It was very dark, and a clock chimed 3 somewhere in the distance. Where am I? Cornelius rubbed his eyes and squinted into the darkness. The darkness seemed somehow unfamiliar. What am I doing here? He felt around for the bedside table and the box of matches. His hand found something warm and wet. What's that? That's not mine. What's going on? The voice was not his either. Who's that? Another voice said dreamily, Go back to sleep. Who said that? The first voice asked, Who is there? Cornelius kept quiet. I am not alone, he thought. Where are my damn matches? I haven't got them, said a new voice. Go back to sleep, will you? Cornelius began to feel the seeds of panic taking root in his stomach. Help, cried he. Let me out of here. What's going on? Asked a voice Cornelius hadn't heard before. The tall boy tried to rise, but something heavy was lying across his legs. Who's doing that? Asked a voice at his feet. Cornelius wriggled free. He stumbled across the room, stepping on to grunting and squirming bodies. Get off there! Who's kicking me? Oaths and shouts broke the temporary silences. Cornelius found himself at the door. He searched for the handle but found a light switch. He pressed his thumb down hard upon it. He was standing in his pyjamas in his bedroom, which was empty but for the usual furniture. Cornelius blinked. A dream. A bad dream. He sighed deeply, switched off the light, and returned to his bed. Watch where you're walking, said a voice. That's my face you're stepping on. Cornelius woke again to find the world up and waiting for him. The sun shone in at his window. The music of the everyday seemed louder than ever. Milk bottles clinked in E sharp. Women's heels played taps upon the pavement. Heavy lorries did the big power chords, and the postman whistled an old Rolling Stones number. He had to be Tuesday. Cornelius gathered his hair and his thoughts together. Something very strange was going on. Something very strange indeed. An epic something, perhaps. He certainly hoped so. Having assured himself that he was all alone, he climbed from his bed, entered his dressing gown, and took himself down to the kitchen for the first breakfast of the day. The Murphy kitchen was not something to dwell on. It was an uncompromising little den which, in keeping with the rest of the house, stoutly refused to make up for its lack of charm. There were a couple of mismatched kitchen units, a butler's sink, an ancient gas oven of the enamel persuasion, a leaking radiator, and an odd-legged table with a red formica top. Behind the table sat a large 3-piece tweed suit, and inside the suit sat a large, merry, red-faced gentleman. He sported a wig composed from shredded jay-cloths, a present from his wife. His name was Jack Murphy, and he was the daddy. Jack had recently taken early retirement from the dole in order to spend more time with his family, and to devote himself more fully to his hobby. Jack's hobby was model making, and he was currently engaged in a vast and ambitious project, the construction of a model town. At the end of the garden, in the shed of his own making, stood the fruit of his labour. It was a utopian vision of Moby Dick Terrace and the surrounding area. Crafted with loving care and precisely detailed, the model displayed a delightful semi-rural community, a harmonious blending of architectural styles, open spaces, shops and views and vistas. It differed considerably from the big brash construction currently on display at the town hall, which stood beneath a sign which read, New Town Development. Of course the word new was now something of a misnomer. The town hall's model was showing some signs of old age and beginning to look a little dated. Although work on the new development had begun several years before, with much champagne bottle breaking and blue ribbon cutting, nothing very much had happened since. True, the bulldozers had levelled the old town, but not a single foundation or main drain was as yet in place. This came as a surprise to many, but not those who knew Jack Murphy, and the Borough Planning Committee had come to know Jack Murphy very well indeed. All works in process had ceased due to complicated legal technicalities. These centred around the discovery by Jack Murphy of numerous old charters, deeds, documents and papers pertaining to rights of way, common ground, bridle paths, wells, waterholes and Lord alone knows what else. It was all going to take a good deal of sorting out, and while it did, The diggers stood idle, and the construction crews drank tea in the wife's legs, and number 23 Moby Dick Terrace stayed exactly where it was. Cornelius entered the kitchen, stubbing his toe on an upraised shard of lino and grazing his shin upon the door, which chose, this morning, to only open half of the way. The daddy smiled up from his copy of Mackenzie's Local Law and Law 1655 to 1660. "Good morning, revered author of my existence," said Cornelius. The oldster chuckled. "Good morning to you, respected seed of my loins. Your mother's gone out, but there's tea in the pot. Glory be." Cornelius poured himself a cup and topped up the daddy's. "My thanks. 2 letters for you." A big hand indicated the pair of envelopes which lay on the unpolished tabletop. Cornelius sat himself down and regarded the envelopes with suspicion. One looked safe enough, bearing as it did Mr. Yarrow's distinctive scrawl. Cornelius tucked this, unopened, into a dressing-gown pocket. 2 weeks' holiday money, he assumed correctly. The other envelope, however, was a different kettle of fish. This one was big and smart and official-looking. It had the words "Private and Confidential" printed in the top left-hand corner. The tall boy's name and address were typed on, dead centre. Cornelius did not recognise the typeface. It had a slightly Gothic look to it. He picked up the envelope and gave it a bit of a shake. Something hard inside went to and fro. "I did that," said the daddy. "Intriguing, isn't it?" Cornelius replaced the envelope and sipped at his tea. It was stone cold. "This tea is cold," he informed the daddy. "I thought as much. The last cup was just the same. Aren't you going to open your envelope?" "I think not." "Let me do it then." "Certainly not. It says private and confidential." "Only the envelope." The daddy finished his cold tea. "I much prefer this hot, you know." He waggled his cup at Cornelius. "Go on. Open it up." "All right, then." Cornelius picked up the envelope and tore it open. Out fell a sheet of typed paper and a hard little something. Cornelius picked up the something. He had never seen a credit card, and indeed he was not looking at one now. What he was looking at was something approximately the same size. Cornelius turned it upon his palm. It was fashioned from dark green plastic, wafer thin, yet of considerable weight. A number of holes had been punched through it. Cornelius observed that these corresponded in size to the diameter of a number 13 knitting needle. He turned his attention to the typed paper. It was a letter, and it read, "Dear Cornelius Murphy, Arthur Kobold Publications are pleased to announce a vacancy for an ambitious and enterprising young person. AKP are currently engaged in epic work and require the services of an independently minded school leaver prepared to work without supervision at hours of his own choosing. High remuneration, excellent prospects, and an immediate cash bonus await a successful applicant who will present himself at 12 noon today. Good luck, Arthur Kobold." Cornelius read through the letter again and then whistled, and then he glanced down at his watch, and then he made a troubled face. "Why do you make a troubled face, O son of mine?" the daddy asked. Cornelius handed him the letter. The daddy read through it once, read through it twice, glanced up at the kitchen clock, and then he too made a troubled face. Cornelius observed that several strands of j-cloth wigs spelled out the words, "There is no God but Allah," in Arabic across the daddy's left temple. "It is nearly 10 of the morning clock," said the elder Murphy. "And the letter has no address upon it," his son added. "Show me the little something." Cornelius passed the something to his father, who examined it with great interest. "What is it?" he asked at length. "It has more weight than seems natural." Cornelius retrieved both letter and card and set them down before him. "It is clearly a test of initiative. Locate the offices of Arthur Kobold Publications by 12 noon and win the big cash payout. Bravo, son. Please continue." "Well," Cornelius scratched at his head. The daddy watched the big hair bob perilously. "The card has a number of holes in it. My guess would be that if you were to place it over the letter and shuffle it about a bit, some sort of pattern might well emerge. Considering the limited time allowed, I doubt that a code, if such there should prove to be, would take too much cracking, especially for someone ambitious, enterprising, young, and independently minded. Someone such as yourself, for example." "Precisely. Of course, the secret might lie in the card alone." "Bravo once more. And so how will you deal with it?" Cornelius smiled. In this fashion, I shall put the letter, the envelope, and the little punctured card straight into the dustbin, wash, dress, and repair to the wife's legs for a hot cup of tea." "Bravo once more," chuckled the daddy. "Exactly what I would have done. Put it in next door's bin, though. Don't want to upset your mother." Of course, Cornelius rose to take his leave. "Just one thing before you go." The daddy displayed another sheet of paper and handed it to him. "A list of modelling supplies," he explained. "Balsa, glue, brass trimmings, things of that nature." "Oh, yes." Cornelius raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yes. I thought you might care to treat me." "You did?" "Out of your holiday money." The daddy winked. Cornelius smiled more broadly than ever. "My pleasure," he said. Cornelius bathed, togged up in a faded Hawaiian shirt and his favourite only summer suit, slid his unsocked feet into a pair of canvas loafers and set out to test a certain hypothesis. He breakfasted at the wife's legs, cashed his cheque at the High Street Bank, left the daddy's list with Mr. Moore of Moore's Models, and then went off for a bit of a stroll round. He passed the time of day with 2 Quarts, the tramp, waved to some strangers on a coach, stroked a tomcat under the chin, and watched a steam train go under a bridge. His strolling took no fixed route. On the contrary, he wandered where the spirit led him. As the town hall clock struck 12, he found himself in an untidy cul-de-sac beneath the railway arches, and as the final chime rang out, before a dark green door. Cornelius stepped sharply up and rapped upon it with his knuckle. The door flew open and a small whiskered face peeped up at him. "Mr. Kobold?" Cornelius asked. "Mr. Arthur Kobold?" "Cornelius Murphy," said Arthur Kobold. "I have been expecting you."